Welcome, Internet, to the PixelPlay Sidequest, your bonus YouTube exclusive where we come together and talk about just a random topic, reviews, whatever we want. This week, Adam is coming to us with another review. As you know, we are not big enough to get review copies ahead of time, so we review them on our own dime and on our own time, making them untimely reviews. With that being said, Adam, what game were you coming with us today to talk about?
So, as I mentioned on the podcast last week, I did play After Trails Through Daybreak, a game that came out of left field for me called Until Then. I believe the publisher or the developer's name is Polychroma. I'm pretty sure I've got that right. Based out in the Philippines, which I don't know what it is about indie games from the Philippines, but this just seems to always work. Like Coffee Talk comes from there, Space for the Unbound, which is my runner up to Game of the Year last year. They understand how to make feels good games, whether it's feels good or feels really, really, really sad, which it did both, honestly, in this game. So, as I explained it before, it's almost like if Super Nintendo kind of had like sort of a visual novel sort of bit to it. Like it comes off like very old school, but also still has like a modern look to it. This game also has a lot of like anime sort of looking animations to it with a lot of their scenes as well. So there is a nice bit of vibe with that. And it's, as I mentioned before, it's just one of those things where you don't expect it to be as witty, funny, and then out of nowhere just get real serious and real sad. It's like Yakuza without all the stuff that Kaylan is not going to want to play it for. So so there's that. The gist of this game is that you are playing who you see on the right hand of your screen there, Mark, who is your typical, I'm assuming, high school student. They never really officially say if the school's a high school or not. It's just I don't even, it might even be a private school actually, now that I think about it. But he lives alone. His parents have both moved to work abroad in order to give him a better life. So he is someone who is a little more, let's say, a bit of a delinquent because he has had a not so great upbringing since his parents have left him, which is apparently at somewhere around like 12 or 13, which is a weird age to also leave your kid alone. But I'm not to judge. It's a video game. Um, and he just goes through his journey, which starts off with him just being your usual delinquent, forgot to do his homework, has to cram last second for stuff, and then ends up running into, both figuratively and literally, a new transfer student who they get along tremendously well, as I say in the most sarcastic way possible at the start, and then slowly sort of realize that they're both cut sort of from the same cloth. They both have stuff that they're dealing with. They both are, people that are trying to be independent and have like, a bit of a, fuck everybody else sort of personality to them. And they just start to kind of grow from there. And the game seems like your typical, like, high school teenage coming of age story that you would expect to see on like some like television series or a movie. And then it decides to, well, go in three different directions. One of which is, again, they kind of go pretty anime with it at times. But the other two is they get real fucking deep and dark. They go into tremendous amounts of detail about loss, about child abuse, about a lot of really, really serious shit. And then when you think you've got all that, then it starts getting into supernatural territory. Then we start talking about alternate realities and how memories from like different lives may overflow with you and all these different little concepts and stuff. And it feels like it could have gotten too busy, but it doesn't feel like that at all. Like for a roughly 10 to 15 hour experience, you get pretty succinct stories for what it wants to tell. When it's time for the emotional stuff, it does it. When it's time for the silly side stuff, it does that. And then when it's time for the really unique supernatural things, then it does that pretty seamlessly. My one complaint, I guess, with the story is that towards the very end, it does feel like it tries to drag its final points a little too much, to the point that like I did get to an area where I was like, come on, I just want to know, is the thing that I want to happen going to happen? And you just start getting impatient. But that also means that the crux of its story is working because I just want to know if I did the right things or not. So it's also that like unwillingness to wait, like that like pins and needles sort of thing of like, fuck, don't fuck this up, don't fuck this up, don't fuck this up. And it does that really, really well, to the point that in the initial ending, which I did mention last week as well, there are essentially three playthroughs, but I more or less called them two because the credits only roll twice. But like the first time the credits roll, do not assume that you're done. I made that mistake thinking it was a bittersweet sort of ending and went to look into it and then realized there were more playthroughs. So I went back. Thankfully, the checkpoint was pretty close to the end anyway. And at the end of the credits, there just says continue, yes or no. And if you click yes, then it starts again. And you basically wake up starting from the same point as you did at the start of the game. But shit's different. Now all of a sudden, a different person's calling you on your phone at the beginning of the game. There are certain little things, like at the beginning of the game, you're just walking through a train station, and I noticed right away it was different because posters were not the same. There was something different being advertised now. There were different conversations. There were different people on the side of the road. And then eventually you start seeing the first like major scene, and it's not the same person helping you in that scene, and you go, well, that's not what happened. And then it starts really transferring into that alternate reality thing, and it starts to go from there. So if the endings start at the first time, stop with that. This is still an incredible game, and honestly, it might have been better that they stopped at that if you wanted a shorter experience, because it is a really, really good, heartbreaking ending. Like, it is similar to Chris, because I think, Chris, you played Firewatch, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's one of those games that, like, you're expecting something good to come out of the end, and it doesn't. It's similar to that, where, like, the game ends, and you're just left fucking empty inside. Like, it was a really effective ending, to the point that I closed the game because I was mad. And then I looked into it, and thank God I did. So, you know, the ending to the second time around is a lot more happy, but also still made me fucking cry again anyway. And that's the key about this thing. In the similar way to a Space for the Unbound made me very emotional, but just wasn't enough to get the win. This, at least at this point in time, we obviously still got 4 months to go, but this beat Helldivers, a game that I didn't think anything was going to be able to beat. I legitimately thought I was going to carry that game through the entire year, and now this game came out of left field and is now easily my game of the year. And now I'm at the point that I don't know what touches this, because this one hit me on an emotional level that no game has done in a long time. I've cried once in a game before. I have not cried multiple times in a game before. It's a powerful game. It really, it's not a game I would play if you're in a real depressive or stressed out mood. It's not a good game for that. It is a really bad game for somebody who's dealing with some shit right now. So I would say if this is the kind of game that looks interesting to you, do not play this if you're really having a bad day. Okay? That's my one thing. Like, there is some really good, like, happy, funny stuff in this, but as soon as it turns the corner, not a good time to be when you're really, really sad at that point. Maybe it's cathartic. I don't know. Maybe that's the kind of thing some people would be good for, but, like, I wouldn't risk it if you're under a pretty heavy bit of depression. So it's definitely a game that shows some pretty dark sides of what being a teenager can be if you're in a, especially in, I'm not sure if it's I'm assuming it's located in the Philippines, but I never actually outright says where you are. But, like, in a country like that, where it is not nearly as modernized as, say, ours is here in Canada, there is going to be room for some much more darker themes, especially when you're talking about living in poverty, when you're talking about, you know, definitely the class systems where people have a lot more than the people that don't have much. And then especially, too, with religion being a much bigger part in much less modernized countries as well, that there's a lot more openness for abuse, which is another big part of this game that is definitely something that it comes with a lot of trigger warnings, this game, which is why I can't recommend it enough, but I also have to put a bunch of caveats toward it. If things like child abuse, death, grievance, if that's a lot of stuff that doesn't really jive with you right now, do not touch this game. That is a big no-no. But if you're okay with these themes and can handle that shit, you're in for what I might think be one of the best emotional rides that I have played in a long time.
Cool. Awesome.
Very cool. How long does it take? How long did it take you?
It's definitely somewhere in the early 10s. Like, the first playthrough was somewhere around, I'd say, 6-ish hours. And then each, like, because like I said, there's 3 playthroughs, and after that, they're about 3 hours a piece each, I would say. So somewhere around, like, the 12 to 14 hour mark, I would say. Because, like, a lot of the second and third runs are the same things but repeating, so they don't go in nearly as length and detail, because now you've established things. Like, for example, one of the big reveals in the first playthrough gets revealed in, like, the second chapter compared to, like, what's the 5th or 6th? I can't remember which one specifically, but, like, stuff gets brought out a lot more sooner the second time and third time around, so you at least get through It's not like the same monotony of you literally playing the entire game front to back again with slight alterations. It definitely pushes through a little bit faster. But I would say like definitely at most like 15 if you're really taking your time.
Nice.
There are like, it's not a very intensive game. They do have a couple of random mini games in there, but they're not really that intensive. The most intense thing you can deal with is there's a sort of a Dance Dance Revolution thing where it's you playing piano and it's 4 buttons that you do. I don't even know if you failing it actually means anything. I never thought to try it. I did okay. There are some times where it's a little finicky, but not a big deal. But it's a nice way to kind of take some of the edge off. In the same way that like Yakuza does that with mini games, this game kind of does it too, where it takes a moment away from like the emotional stress and just pops in like a random funny scene or something. Like again, these little anime-esque sort of brief animations that they do for like a good like couple of lines of dialogue that just kind of take a bit of the edge off. It's really well paced, apart from just the ending taking a little bit longer in its last moments just to get to the. I know there's a bunch of exposition and a bunch of like they're overcoming all this emotional stuff, but at the same time I'm like, okay guys, you could have at least like taken a quarter of this dialogue out just so I could get to what I want. Come on, I'm a little impatient here. I worked hard for this ending.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for that review, Adam. If you liked that, check it out. And if you like this, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe. And we post every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, wherever you get your podcasts or on youtube.com. If you've played the game and you want to leave your thoughts, leave it in the comments below. We'd greatly appreciate it. And with that, we will see you guys on Wednesday. Have yourselves a great day. Bye for now.